Good afternoon. Thank you very much for coming to my presentation. I start with something a little more personal. About 3 years ago, after many years in the high-tech Israeli industry, various jobs, programming, manager, sales executive, I found myself out of job. I didn't have a job. The company I work with closed, and I started to look for a job, and I found out that after you are 50, it's much more difficult to find a job. So I had two very serious problems. One, financial. I really badly needed a job. The second one, I had a lot of free time. And I didn't know how I can best use that free time. So I tried to play with some codes. I started with quite simple codes. And then I start to program about those codes. And then I work with more complex codes. And then I did some work on simple transposition ciphers. And I found some method that was quite effective. And then at some day, I started to look for challenge. And I'm going to present what I found. First, okay, those are the ciphers I've been working on, and I hope that I have enough time to present all of them. First one is the double transposition cipher. Double transposition cipher was, I would say, the spy cipher, the cipher of choice for spies, because it's not very complex to write, pen and paper, and secondly, if it's correctly used, it's quite secure. And in fact, if we look at the literature, I mean, of the open, the declassified literature, the double transposition cipher was solved only in special cases, and mainly, even Friedman in his paper writes about it, in special cases where the operator made mistakes. So basically what we do, we write the text here in rows, then we shuffle the columns with the first key, and then we write the text again, and we shuffle the columns again, and this gives us the cipher text. So we have two keys, two transposition keys. And this cipher it turns out it was used extensively by the Stasi, the East German Secret Service, to communicate between his headquarters and the spies in Western Germany. And Otto Lasry, who unfortunately just passed away a few months ago, he was the top cryptographist for the East or the West German service, and his task was to break that code. And he was working with a slight variant of the double transposition cipher, and he was lucky because at some stage the police just entered an apartment of one of the spies and found a code book. But after he left the service, for him it was still an open question whether there is a way to a general solution to the double transposition cipher. So he proposed in a paper to publish a challenge that Klaus Schmey, who is here in the room, took on. And this cipher had to have some very secure parameters, long enough key, different K1 and K2 key, and some requirement on the length of the message. And this was supposed to make that very, very secure. So I discovered that in, you can see here Craig. Craig is going to present the world's oldest unsolved cipher. This is a presentation about the world's greatest unsolved cipher.
Gotta mix it up a little.
Yes. And again, I was looking for a challenge, and I was looking at about 12 cases of unsolved cipher, and I said, which one is for me? Some crazy thought like that, and I said, if I have done something with the transposition cipher, maybe the double transposition cipher should also be easy to solve. It was not easy. I spent on that about 3 months, almost part-time, and then it took all my time. I barely slept. I looked for every possible algorithm I could think of. And after about 3 months of hard work, I tried to think of a special solution, which basically it's a classical divide and conquer. If we can't solve the whole problem, the two transpositions together, let's break at least one separately. And it was not easy to achieve. and it needed some very, very precise and specialized statistical analysis about the result. Like, if we ignore the second key, and we try to guess the second one, what is the text here supposed to look like? And eventually, one day, I see this text. I say, wow, I can't believe that. And I was speechless. At least for one day, I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. I was so excited. So I sent an email to Klaus Schmidt, and I said, I have found a solution. And Klaus Schmidt does not answer me. So I said, do I have a bug? So I had to look again and again and again. And after a few days, then Klaus answered and said, yes, that's a solution. And then what happened was kind of a snowball effect. I got an email from Otto Lasry congratulating me about this success. And it was very moving, and I also thank him for that, very kind note. And then the story was out in the German press. On the same day, it was taken by the Israeli press. I was invited to talk on radio and on TV. And 2 weeks later, someone from Google called me and said, come for an interview. So it was not easy to get into Google. That's not enough to solve something. I have to solve a long list of tests, but eventually now I'm working at Google. Next one. So what happens? Sorry. When you solve something, you feel kind of a feeling of emptiness. And what happened, it's kind of obsessive. You need to find something else to solve. And then there is kind of a hunt. Klaus Schmidt knows that very well because he has a site with all types of unsolved ciphers, and people hunt for them, and whenever something is published, then everyone in the community, the small community, wants to solve it first. It's very childish kind of behavior, but that's the way it is. So I was looking for my next challenge, and then this is what I found. Very interesting story by Dennis Ritchie, the inventor of Unix. Jim Reed is with us today. And the last one was Robert Morif, the NSA guys among you probably have heard about him. And this is what he wrote in a website. And then when you see that, you say, what's that about? You have to find out what exactly they did. And then it turns out that's the story about the Hagelin 209. The Hagelin 209 is the most successful encryption device, mechanical encryption device ever produced, and widely used by the US and many other governments. And in '77, Ritchie and Morris found a solution to crack it, and it could work with messages with that length. The longer the message, of course, the easier it is to crack, but still this is a quite good result. They prepared a paper to Cryptologic. They sent it to NSA. At the time, it was customary to send paper to NSA, and they received a visit from someone they called a retired gentleman from Virginia that very charming way explained, no problem, you can publish it, there is no problem, but you should know some people in the agency feel that it might harm the interests of the US and other Western government, so please consider, and if you want to, and what you do here is very nice, but we can do better. And if you want to know what we are doing, come to work with us. So eventually, Bob Boris went to the NSA, by the way, but the result that there is no paper. So when I read that, I said, what those guys did? I need to find out what those guys did. And the bottom line, I don't know what they did, but I developed my own method. And it took also about 3 months. That was more challenging because I was already working at Google. But still, it's a very complex method with a lot of steps, very complex statistical analysis, but it can solve messages which are much shorter. And in some documents, I saw that NSA could, and if anyone here wants to confirm that, I will be happy to hear or deny, but I heard that NSA was able to solve messages with about the same length. So using that, and it's always more fun when you solve a system to have some challenge to solve, because that, you get some more gratification, and also you can prove that your method is really working. So I found a series of challenges, one of them by Barker and Greg Mellon. Greg Mellon was an editor of Cryptologic. And a message about 1,000 letters, and a few other challenges that I solved, including one by Bob Morris, that after I solved it, this is what I saw. So this is what next? After those two exciting stories. That's not the last. ADF-GDX, it's a longer story. It took me about 1 year to work on that. ADF-GDX was the most advanced field ciphers used by the Germans during World War I. And it was introduced especially for their spring offensive in 1918. And it took a few months for this guy, the French guy, Georges Pavin, to break it in special conditions. And this gave some very crucial intelligence to the French and their allies about the intention of the German, the exact position of the next offensive. And this was considered to be quite a success. The cipher is a combination of substitution with a square, and transposition, and fractionation. Fractionation means that the symbol the two symbols per letter are fractionated and appear in different places. This story is well known. What is less well known is that the same ADF-GDX cipher was extensively used in the East Front, between Berlin and outposts in Georgia, in Romania, and in Constantinople, and a few other places. Mostly it's about diplomatic and military, but strategic, not tactical military communication. The guy that was, the US and the French divided the war between themselves. The French were responsible for the western side of the ADF-GDX, and the US was responsible for, and Reeve Charles, the guy, the officer in charge, for the Eastern Front messages. And after the war, he wrote a paper, and in that paper, there is some kind of an unknown treasure, about 668 messages, which is really, and I did some work to find out, is there another treasure like that of messages from World War I? And I couldn't find. Even in the archive in Germany, most of them have been burned in the Second World War. And Child, with his team, was able to recover 10 of the 14 key. And what I did, I developed a new method to break it, to break the ADF-GDX, and it allowed me, it was based on the index of coincidence, Friedman's famous method, famous measure, but the whole algorithm around was more complex. And Charles' method needed at least 12 messages to solve it, and my method can solve it with 2 or 3, and sometimes with 1. And with that, I was able to recover all the keys and to decipher about 93% of the traffic. There are still about 50. A lot of it is garbled. A lot of it, groups are missing. Groups are just not clear, and it's very difficult to decipher them. What I plan to do is that those 7% to publish them somewhere and to help to ask for help for the community. Maybe someone else will be able to find the solution. Anyway, the historical value of them is huge. I mean, there is no revelation, something that we didn't know, groundbreaking news, but when you look at the inside, there is very intimate communication between Berlin and the generals, then you find a lot of information, what's going on during those last months of the war. For example, there was an occupation army in Romania, led by Field Marshal Mackensen, and he has to capitulate. And then what you see in the communication is that Mackensen is mostly concerned about his own comfort and much less what will happen with his own soldiers. So you see a lot, a very interesting thread about the Kiel mutiny. 2 days before the armistice, the German Navy rebelled and refused to go to battle. And there is a long thread how that event impacted the communication. Some very cryptic messages about secret agent, and okay, thank you. The last one, very interesting link, because Hagelin was born in Russia. His father was the head of the Nobel subsidiary in Baku, and the name Hagelin appears in one of the messages. Next one, chaos cipher. Who knows that? Who's around? Okay, that's kind of a private story. It's John Byrne, an Irish guy, created a cipher which caught the imagination of many researchers because it was secret for a long time, and he published it in a book, and there were a few exhibits, and for years amateurs tried to break it, and there were 6 exhibits. Each exhibit is a challenge. What happened is that in 2010, the whole package, the whole documentation was handed over by his family to the NSA, to the museum, and then it was able to find out how this worked and the solution for exhibit 1 to 5, but exhibit 6 was still not solved. So as you can guess, I started to work on exhibit 6. and then I solved it. There are 25 short messages, and this is some obscure poem. And the method again, and by the way, this trace also appeared in the first messages that Klaus Schmey produced. And the idea again is a divide and conquer, also using the nets of coincidence, just to try to solve this part, ignoring this part. And what I suspect is that when Byrne tried to sell that idea to Friedman, Friedman probably had in mind that there is a weakness related to the index of coincidence. Next project. Following Jim Reed's publication of this wonderful book, which is 800 pages, and who read that book, by the way? Okay, so I'm the only one who has read 80% of that book in the room. Anyway, it's a very interesting book about the method that were used by the British to break the TANI, the strategic level communication links. And what we have here, we have 5 wheels that are called the Chi wheel, and we have 5 psi wheels, and we have the motor wheels. A lot of mathematics, and the Colossus, by the way, the main purpose of the Colossus was to break the Chi wheel. So I'm working right now is an effort to break the other wheels using statistical method, and I have good result. It's going to be in another paper. And I have a few other projects that I have less time to get into. Enigma has been extensively researched, so I don't think my contribution is so important. Still, it's a nice contribution, and also it helped me to win a contest, which is also nice. A contest organized by the Polish government in memory of the achievement of the Polish cryptographer. Basically, it uses the method used by the Polish cryptographer using the double indicator of Enigma, but the original method needed between 50 to 100 indicators, and the method that I've developed needs only 10. Single transposition, what I did is kind of a theoretical exercise. I was trying to find out with hugely long key, can this cipher be secure? And even with a key which is long with 1,000 elements, then we can still break it. The last one, and I think it's also very interesting in view of what we heard yesterday from Kudiansky about the Friedman-Hagelin link, is about the CX52. And the CX52 is, at the time, it was out in the field, and all the agencies have to rethink and to find new methods to break it. And one of the ways that NSA handled that was to ask Hagelin not to hand over the more complex version to non-friendly government. So the work that I'm trying to do now, I want to understand which features inside the Hagelin make it secure. So I have developed a few methods to break various versions, and I think I have a good idea today of what the NSA was mostly frightened of from all those features. So that concludes my presentation. And to conclude that, it's a passion, but it's always sometimes an obsession. Whenever you get your hand on something, you can't leave it. You just can't leave it. And it costs. I mean, sometimes it's about sleep, it's about time, it's about not going to work, and especially on some days. But Google, they are quite forgiving about that. And what I also found that in that field is that I always wanted to understand the historical method of breaking cipher. Because when you read the story about Enigma, and then you get into the diagonal board and the bomb and all the diagram, the story is nice, but if you don't really understand the technicalities, you can't really feel the achievement. You can't really feel how hard it was and how original and creative and inventive those methods were. And this gave me, what I did, more ability to see that with those eyes. And of course, sometimes you can find some historical message, and you can win contests, which is good for the ego and for finding jobs. And also, the community that is involved in the technical work of breaking historical code is not big, but it's very passionate. And everyone I'm talking to are great people, and it's really a joy to do that. And a lot of publication. And the last twist is that after I broke a few of them, then I got an offer. Why don't you apply for a PhD program? I'm 55, by the way. So why don't you apply? And so I was very surprised at that, to get an offer to apply for a PhD program at 55, but still it's possible. And then I'm starting that project, that program, and the main theme of this PhD program will be the general methodology. It's not anymore a method, it's kind of general methodology to break the cipher, because eventually it works. It works for many cases.
Is this mathematics or computer science?
It's more it's about optimization projects.
Okay.